How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. When you see a few longer scoring drives like you'll had last week and compare that to the first week, is that enough in and of itself to say, hey, there's been some progress there, or do you feel like there should be more to maybe indicate that?
I think our goal at this point of the season was to be 2-0, and I think our record's 2-0.
Hey, Dowell, I know you talked about after the first game that you guys really needed to rely more on the run down the stretch. With this Kentucky game, how much more comfortable did you feel mixing it up and running or putting some pass plays into effect?
I think your question was about balance. Like you're saying, yeah. Yeah, I thought that Lenore was seeing things well, and you get to the point in the games. And part of being a coach is you got to manage your players, manage the game. You got to understand what's going to win that individual game, and you treat each game differently, and there's a different formula. There's always a formula to win. You got to find it as a coach, and at that point, I thought our guys were protecting well and seeing things well, and the offensive line was protecting well, and Lenore was seeing things well. So I think it did create a little bit of balance. I think the biggest thing was we hit some shots that we didn't hit the week before in the passing game.
You talk about progress and just the goal being 2-0 and trying to get obviously now to 3-0. What's the next step for this offense? What has to happen just week 1 to 2 to 3 for you to say it's still moving forward?
Consistency, just being more as consistent as possible as a unit, eliminate negative plays, which is sometimes can be a challenge when you're playing a lot of young people like we are. When you look at some of the sacks that happen, it's easy to say offensive line, but they weren't. They were on other positions. And so for us, it's getting these young guys playing up to speed and eliminating negative plays and playing more consistent with our technique and fundamentals.
I think the 3 big plays were the 2 catches by Mazio, that touchdown to Josh Simon in the passing game. It seemed like on all 3, those guys figured out ways to just completely get around the defense. Is that exactly how you schemed it up? Was that them executing perfectly, or was there part of the defense kind of missed on those?
Yeah, I think it's anytime it's good, it's the players. Anytime it's bad, it's the coaches. That's how I've always looked at things. So those 3 guys, including the quarterback, including the protections, they executed well and did their jobs and were in perfect spots to where they were supposed to be, and Lenore's got them the football.
What are the challenges that LSU will present for you guys and for others, obviously, too?
Yeah, their defense coordinator comes over from Missouri, and he's had a lot of success against South Carolina the last 3 or 4 years, and I faced him twice at Arkansas. He does a really good job, creates a culture of playing hard that shows up on tape. As soon as you hit play, you see a team that buys into what he's doing, and on top of it's LSU, and they've got elite recruiting for years, and on top of a head coach that's obviously knows how to win games. So we're fortunate we get to play here at home, and it'll be a lot of our players' second SEC start. So you start adding experience, and hopefully we continue to get better each week. And their style of play on top of their scheme, on top of their talents, what creates issues.
It seems like Michael Smith has been a pretty big part of the offensive game plan so far. What have you seen out of him these 2 games that maybe you saw in camp? What was the same about him? What's been good about him? What's maybe a little bit different? How's he reacted?
He's handled it well. He was a kid that I recruited at Arkansas really hard. So I got to know him very well, and the moment hasn't been too big for him. There's obviously things he needs to clean up, and you can prepare these guys for a lot of different things, but you can't prepare them for everything that happens on a field. There's just not enough time. There's not enough reps. There's a 20-hour rule. So for him to go out there and be able to handle the volume he's handled, playing really 3 different positions, because he's when 13 personnel, he plays a different position than when we're 11 and then 12. So he's got roles in three different things, and a specific role on top of being the / starter in 12 / backup in 11 personnel at tight end. So been really pleased with him. He's going to be a really good football player. He's a great addition to this roster, not only as a football player but as a kid too, and he does things the right way. He's a quiet, humble worker. I'm sure that the personality's going to come out more as he's here, but I'm excited about coaching him and excited that he's here.
Kind of sticking with the freshman on offense, how good was it to see Mazio make the impact that he did, and how hard can it be for a true freshman to kind of make that impact or so early on? Yeah,
I wish we weren't playing this many freshmen. So for Mazio, it's not too big for him. Like, he has the mindset, and he gets it from his mom and dad. And if you met them, they're wonderful people. And same thing with Michael Smith. You talk about, we're fortunate to have those type kids in our program that the moment's not too big when they're freshmen. And without those two plays, I don't know what that game looks like. But he was able to do his job and get open and score a touchdown, which is, how cool is that? Your first SEC start on the road, and you're 10-point underdogs, and you score the first touchdown. And I think, like, when things happen to young players like that, it builds confidence. And when their confidence starts to grow, you start to see their personality, and you start to see them perform better, because confidence only comes from demonstrated ability. So you got to go out in the field and do it, and that's what Mazio did. And super proud of him. Doesn't surprise me at all because of the way he's made and his mindset.
What was going through your mind as Lenoris came off the field with, I guess, the hip or whatever kind of knock that he had? What was the conversation like with Robbie transitioning into going out onto the field, and any kind of game plan changes, or did you stick with exactly what you were planning to go with Lenoris?
No, I mean, they're different players. They both got a unique skill set, but there's things that Robbie does really well, and there's things that Lenoris does really well. So we adjusted right there. Same thing, you talk about a guy that when your number's called, you got to go in there and execute, and he led us on a drive and got points, which is a big field goal at that moment in the game. And the reason that matters is because you need momentum. And the other guys you're playing these tough SEC road games, that defense is really good. They had 10 returning starters, and the guy they brought in was starter at Georgia last year, and I think it was the number 2 or 3 defense. They're going to have about 5 or 6 guys drafted in the NFL. And they're really well coached, maybe the best defense coordinator in the SEC, and Brad White. He does a phenomenal job, and he's hard to prepare for. And if we don't go down there and get those points right there, like, you don't know how the momentum of the game. Obviously, our defense, special teams, are playing really well as well. So, but it changes in the fact that you're playing to their certain skill set. And there are things that Lenoris does better than Robbie, and there's certain things that Robbie does better than Lenoris. So you try to lean in on what's in the game plan that he's better at, and the reps he's gotten as the backup. You don't always get as many reps as a starter. So it's also, when you're scripting the practice out, like, you have to think, like, hey, I think Robbie'd be good at this, so let's make sure he gets this rep in practice, because it'd be the stuff that we'd use with him in the game.
With Lenoris, it doesn't seem like he's too concerned about the fumbles just because of the way they happened. Are you concerned about them? Is there anything you've done in practice this week to try and make sure those don't happen?
Yeah, well, some of them are blindside shots, and when you see blindside shots in the NFL, the ball comes out. There was last year against these guys, Spencer Rattler, as good as he is, he got hit on a blindside shot, and the ball shoots up and is in the air because they don't see those guys coming. You get hit in the face and on those things. So it's making sure that everyone around him is doing his job. Like, all those fumbles happen on situations that we should be protected, and we should be clean, have a clean pocket, and be able to throw the ball down the field. So I'm concerned with the other things on those plays. Obviously, ball security is at a premium, and when you play the style of game that we've been playing the last 2 weeks, like, you need to take care of the football, and you need to play good situational football and complementary football. So turnovers and explosive plays will always be the most important thing in football, and it leads to points, it leads to wins. So for us, it's making sure, diagnosing why it happened, fixing the things, and Lenoris fixing a couple of technique and fundamental things to make sure that you keep 2 hands on the ball and do those things. But sometimes when you take shots as a quarterback, you're exposed. That's why the NFL has so many rules on how you can hit a quarterback.
Going back to what you're saying about the offensive line and them not being responsible for some of those breakdowns and protection, with the line in particular for the first 2 weeks, where do you feel like those guys have been at? Like, how satisfied are you with them? And I'm sure you're looking for more, but where do you think
you're always looking for more at every position. But what I've been excited about is their style of play, how hard they played. Like, they're physical too. And the touchdown that Rocket had, you watch Torselli on that pull, like, he splatters that defensive end. It's a really good player. He splattered too, and the excitement they play together. We're not always perfect, and it's not always the cleanest stuff, but we play hard. And you can see that they're playing for each other, and I think that's really important in football. And you don't get absolute buy-in if the group doesn't believe in their position coach. So I think that starts with Coach Teasley and the mindset that he's created with, 2 new starters and a true freshman that are playing at a pretty well enough to be 2-0 and to get an SEC win on the road versus the number 2 defense in the SEC last year. And it comes down to how they're playing, it's the style of play. there's a lot of things we need to clean up as an offensive unit, but what you can't fix is attitude and effort, and that's where they're different than last year, and that's where we're really pleased. You said, what are you pleased about the offense line? Their style of play.
Several carries for Lenoris opening week, not quite as many this past week. Obviously, he missed about a quarter of football, but game plan against Kentucky or more concerted effort to keep him from running the ball quite as much.
No, there was stuff in there. Some of those carries went to Robbie. So there's always going to be elements with his talent, like featuring his talent of having the ability to run him when needed. It was also a completely different scheme that allowed more access into some throws than quick game throws than ODU offered that way. So I think that there were some things just structurally in game plan changed naturally by the structure of the defense.
Going back to the tight ends for a second, it seemed like they were able to get more involved in this last weekend and make some big plays. How much of a difference does it make from a scheming and play calling standpoint when you're able to have them involved as much as they were?
Well, they're good players, so it definitely those things definitely help. Balance in the offense is not run pass all the time. Is it your guys touching the ball? Is Mike Smith touching it? Is Josh Simon touching it? Is Jared Brown? Is Rocket Sanders? Is it Robbie Ashford and Lenore Sellers? So like the ball distribution is important, especially when how many times we throw it last week? Like 20, 23? Like when there's only one football and all of a sudden you're playing. We only play 50 plays total anyway, but when all of a sudden it's now 50% of that time you're passing, 50% of the time you're running, you have to have that ball distribution, and it keeps everyone locked in and everyone understands their role. And you know how it is. Like every tight end receiver wish we threw the ball every snap, and they think they're always open. Appreciate you guys.